Like, I think of beer making from more of like a culinary aspect versus like a traditional styles aspect. Like when I'm thinking of like making a new beer, I'm like, I really want these flavors to be in it. Like, how the fuck can I get there? And then I'm also like complementing that by adding in different like layers of yeast profiles that aren't traditional either. They're traditional in a different sense, in Norwegian sense and Eastern European farmhouse sense, but using those in ways that not many people in North America are using them. Like, they're using them as fermenters, whereas I'm using them as like flavor ingredients, which is super cool. So I'm stacking a lot of yeast and doing a lot of blending. I'm doing lots of different like wood aged things and getting different flavor profiles from like fermentation in wood with different yeast strains.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Matt here from Cryptopsy and the host of the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast. I hope that you had a killer weekend. I most certainly did. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love for you to tell a friend about the podcast. If there's someone in your life that just loves extreme music and loves craft beer, well, you should definitely let them know that the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast exists. You could tell them that there are over 400 episodes where I sit down with some of the world's best metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while enjoying craft beers. If you would encourage one of your metalhead beer-loving friends to become a brand new VOX&HOPS head, that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be with Brad Tomlinson of Jackknife Brewing. Get ready, everyone. This is VOX&HOPS episode number 450.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm very stoked to be with Brad Tomlinson of Jackknife Brewing out of Kelowna, BC. We are here, old school style VOX&HOPS episode. We are at a bar, people. I am not on Zoom. I am not at my house. I am not on tour. I am at home. I am at my neighbor's, my local watering hole. We are at Mellön, one of my favorite places to go. Brad is here because he was in Toronto recently for some beer awards, and he wrote me and said, what happens if I hop over? Are we going to hang out? And I said, fuck yeah. Brad, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fantastic. Cool little neighborhood spot.
Absolutely. We spoke about this on the top 10 episode that I dropped with BAOS, Beerism, and Nate Does Beer, that Mellön is indeed a local spot. It's not a place for craft beer nerds. There's people that come here to just hang out. It's a vibe. It's happening, and they secretly are drinking delicious beer, which is great.
Yeah, that rips. And some pizza, too, in the summertime. That's pretty cool. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Definitely on brand for you, the beer and the pizza. It's missing the metal aspect, but I think that with you and me here tonight, we brought stuff up a whole fuckload, which makes me super happy. What are we drinking? I think we're drinking the same thing. I got a dark Czech lager. What did you get?
I got the Dunkel, yeah. Yeah, it's tasty.
Hell fucking yes. Cheers to you. I'm stoked to be hanging out with you. Take me back to your very first beer. Do you remember the very first beer that you drank, Brad?
Oh, my God. Very first beer? Probably my Gramps homebrew. Kicking in the basement. Some fucking garbage homebrew.
Like from a can, one of those homebrews?
No, like 2-liter pop bottle, like super classic style. Yeah.
I can't believe that so it's a generational thing. You had no choice but to become a brewer.
Yeah, for sure. Like, my Gramps is always making weird fruit, like ciders and things in his basement all the time.
Hell fucking yeah. I want the brewer's story, that origin story. At what point did you stop stealing your Gramps home brews from the basement and start making your own beer?
Oh, I kind of had the wherewithal to try and make some beer down in Victoria, but it never really happened. And then moved back to the Okanagan after a little bit and started homebrewing with a buddy. Actually, my first homebrew that I made was like a smashed up apple beer of all things. Yeah, and my buddy saved an entire case, and when I opened up my shop, he brought the case over, and it actually wasn't fucked. It was pretty cool.
So you're meant to do it. You're in Toronto because you were nominated for an award, almost won an award. Give me some more details on that, please.
Yeah, the Brewers Journal of Canada had nomination requests for brewers. There was like a bunch of different categories, and I was made it for the top 6 of Brewer of the Year.
That's super fucking sick. Congrats, dude.
Yeah, it was super cool. It's nice to get out to Hamilton and the Niagara region and visit a lot of brewers and really touch base with a bunch of people who are making really cool shit out here and really like kind of put the pieces together, because we don't really get a lot of beer from the East Coast, so it's really nice to put some faces to names and stuff. It's cool.
There needs to be a faster way to get beer around, because beer has to be drank fresh, and the Canadian regulations of shipping beer and is a pain in the ass. So hopefully in the future that's something that loosens up, especially with all the breweries that are having financial struggles at this point. It'd be interesting to be able to distribute it faster and wider.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty brutal. I mean, coming from a guy who doesn't distribute beer at all, I can't really complain at all, but I hear all my buddies complaining, and it would be nice for me to drink other people's beer, that's for fucking sure.
I feel like that's the future, and Mellön is doing exactly that, where there's very limited distribution, if all none. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening in the industry, is all these breweries built way too big, massive investments, and then they're like, well, I'm going to distribute, and then all the distribution companies are either folding or not paying them back. And everybody is returning back to that. Let's create a local hub where people have to come and enjoy beer on the spot, which is what happens at Jackknife, which is what happens here, which is what happens at Metalhead here in Montreal. So I think it's like a real identity thing. And, you know, it's sad for a lot of the brewers that are going to have to make cuts, hypothetically, and pull back to that model of business. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, totally. Like, as soon as you move beer off site, like for a place that has a lot of character and is more specific, especially like beer programs like mine, where there's a lot of explaining to do. There's a lot of fucking levels to the process. It's harder to get that across to people, and it kind of gets lost in the mix, you know?
Hell fucking yeah. I drank one of your ones with the beets last Sunday, and I haven't done a beer post on social media in months and months aside from my collabs. And I was like, this is so fucked up and delicious that I have to make a post about it, and I'm glad that I did.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Soundtrack of your youth, when you were growing up in your parents' or guardians' house, what music was playing when you were not in control of the radio? What music did your parents or guardians listen to?
Oh, man. It'd be like road trips going to Golden from Kelowna. It was just like all Pink Floyd playing like non-fucking stop. Yeah. And like some In Excess and shit, and yeah. But that kind of style of music. My parents were like secretly fucking potheads, so, you know, they were getting into it.
At what point did they unveil that side of themselves to you?
Oh, like maybe in my like mid-20s.
Really?
Yeah, they buried it pretty deep. Even from like people from BC, you know? Yeah.
At what point did metal become such a big part of your life? Jackknife's branding and identity is extremely brutal. You wear your metalhead essence on your sleeve, in your posts, the way you write your captions, the way you talk about your beers are all extremely metal. So I want the metalhead story. What is this, you know, you going from Pink Floyd in the car, In Excess, to something more brutal?
Yeah, I think probably like in high school, getting to like go to fucking 3 Inches gigs. Like they'd come and play like little dungeons in Kelowna all the time, like back in like the early 2000s, kind of late 90s kind of jam. And we had a lot of like really talented musicians come out of our valley and go other places and stuff. So the musical influence of like some gnarly shit was always there, and it was always kind of like fluid. And yeah, it just kind of stuck with me. I kind of used it as like a good like mental health balance growing up too, you know, like where you can really just plug in and kind of just fade away.
What would have been like your band of choice, your identity in high school, let's say? If you had to pick 1, 2, 3 bands that were yours, what were those?
I think like really deep cut, like maybe when I found the fucking Champs. Yeah, like that was kind of like, oh, like kind of like weird old like math metal shit, you know? Like that was stuff I could really like get into.
Do you remember your first concert, first show you went to go see?
I don't.
Well, what's a memorable young show that you went to go see?
I think like probably like a super memorable one. Something that I always think back to is like old we used to have Boxing Day shows that my buddy used to throw in Kelowna, and it was like everybody who was in town for the holidays, like they would all get together and they'd throw them all on one bill, and we'd all just like go to this hall. It would be like 200 people, and it'd be like 3 Inches of Blood and like fucking Lady Hawk and like John Ray Fletcher, like a whole fucking mishmash of shit. And it get grouped like a whole bunch of cool people together all at once.
That is a good idea, because everyone's home for the holidays. And that's a really thing for Kelowna, too, because it's a type of city where people move away.
Yeah, and they're all kind of slowly moving back now. So, like, Damien and I have been, like, thinking maybe it might be a thing that we could do again. Especially because, like, the venues are all gone, so we're kind of, like, almost it now.
That's fucking sick. So I want the brewery story. You start making beer yourself. How did Jackknife come together? The whole shebang.
Yeah, I was kind of just homebrewing for a while, and then like back in 2015, I think, the Kelowna beer scene and BC beer scene was pretty small. It was before like the big explosion, and I ended up hearing some murmurs of like someone opening a brewery downtown Kelowna, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's pretty sick. Like, I should go check it out. So I found someone's phone number and ended up just like showing up there while they got the keys and like helping them build out. And then I ended up becoming their head brewer right away. And then I ran that place for 3 years, and then we were kind of sitting down brewing, and the landlord from the building next door came by and was like, hey, do you guys want to expand? And Chris was like, no, it's not really in the cards right now. And I was like, well, I'll take a look. So when wandered over there, and I was like, oh, I could totally envision it, like this shitty old building with like really low 7-foot ceilings, and like I knew there was exposed beams up there. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can work with this. I think it would be really sick.
How did your previous employer take to you opening up, let's say, a competitor's spot so close by?
It was a little rough. Like, it didn't come out of left field because it wasn't like I was something I was always talking about, and it was a little weird. But I kind of got the point across. I was like, hey guys, we're buds, and there's right now there's like 10 breweries trying to open in Kelowna. Like, who do you want there? Like, me or someone else? Like, I'm not going to just spend every day trying to fuck you. Like, I'm going to work a beer program that's complementary to yours. Like, hopefully put a food program that's also complementary to yours. And, like, we worked it out. Now we're drinking buddies and we're hanging on the weekends. We were up at Big White together a couple weeks ago, snowboarding and shit. And we share a forklift. And, like, we're ordering grain with each other, and we share a storage space where we have barrel storage, like, right across the street with another forklift. And whenever we need help, we just call each other and shit. It's great.
So Canadian.
Yeah, very much so. It's pretty great. We have coffee in the morning every morning together. It's beautiful. Kettle River guys shred.
So you finally got into this new space. You envisioned it all. What were some of the biggest struggles finally getting it up and running?
I'd probably say opening the week before COVID hit is probably the biggest fucking struggle. I sold my dirt bike to pay for our patio, and I was like, okay, so I'm not allowed to have people in here. I just like shine the floor up, and at that point we had pizza, but everything was going to be draft, so we didn't even have cans. We had the idea of putting things in crowlers, so I just rush and phone like the company that had crowlers, and they're like, we got half a pallet and we don't know when we're going to get some more. Like, you got to send us $8,000 in the next 2 hours. And at that point we were like dead ass strapped for cash. Like, luckily my wife was able to loan us some cash and we were able to just send it right away, but it was dicey.
Good on her. Because if not, who knows what would have happened to the brewery. That's crazy. Pizza. Why pizza? What is it about pizza? Pizza and beer seems to work real well together. Talk to me about pizza and the artisan side of it. I've seen pictures of the pizza. It looks fucking good. It looks like it's a craft pizza. It's not just a frozen pizza you're throwing in the oven. Talk to me about making good pizza, how you cook it. Do you have one of those ovens, those ceramic ovens? What's going on there?
Yeah, so from the get-go, we always knew we wanted to do some food, and I didn't really exactly know how to execute it. I mean, like, I'm a beer guy. I like cooking food, but I'm not a chef by all means. So I ended up hitting up a friend of a friend who I knew had some really good food programs in the past. He ran his own food truck, and I was a big fan of that. And he played in a band with my buddies, Total Isolation. And I kind of sat down with him. I'm like, hey, man, you want to just kind of check out my plans, scope it out? It's a really tiny kitchen model, but I was thinking about renting it out. And eventually we got to the point where I was like, do you know anybody who'd be interested in cooking there? And he was just like, fuck, I could come on board. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, that's best case scenario. It was I knew his background, I knew his vibe, it was all the things. And we brought him on, and it turns out he's as nerdy about dough as I am about beer, and it's fucking fantastic. I love it. It's my favorite part of him. And we cook on a couple of gas decks, and everybody's like, oh, this is the best Neapolitan style pizza. And we're like, nah, man, it's just fucking classic New York style slice, but everything is just a really good balance.
I think it's important for breweries to offer something to sop up the alcohol. I think it's an important thing that a lot of breweries miss, and it's a second thing that they're going to get to eventually once they tackle the beer side of things.
Yeah, and we really, from the get-go, our ethos was have the highest quality beer we can serve to people and have the highest quality food for the most affordable rate. Especially in a place like our little dungeon spot where it's we want to have this beer accessible to everybody too. So you can come in, hang out, crush some beers and a pizza and just not feel like you got fucking bent over. It's a lot, you know.
Bringing the metal into the identity. Here in town, there's Messorum Brassatorium, which is the coolest brewery in Montreal. The top 10 episode, we declared them the best brewery of Quebec. They are freaking amazing. They are ran by metalheads. Alex from Despised Icon is their general manager, taproom manager, manager in general. One of the brewers used to play in The Last Felony, who I toured with across Canada with Cryptop C. We played in Kelowna. And Gab from Ion Dissonance is also super involved in the whole project. So I went there so excited, expecting it to be a fucking metal bar, and it is the farthest thing from that. It is very cool and hip and amazing, but far from a metal bar. We have Mutaid. That's what I was expecting. It was far from being that. You took the decision to reflect metal in the brewery. What was the thought process behind that? And we'll start with that, and then I have a follow-up.
I did a trip across the States. I moved my sister from New York to Portland.
Really?
And I was we're driving this shitty old fucking Saturn, and it's covered in all of our pottery gear, and we could only do 80 kilometers an hour. So we took all the back roads, and I was like, well, we're going to make a sick trip out of this. Let's hit up all the metal breweries. So we went to Three Floyds, we went to True, we were hanging on Bend. And when I got to True, I was looking around and just fucking dudes, midday, white collar guys, button up shirt, just crushing funky weird beer. And I'm okay, I think people can appreciate this if you really lean in. And I'm a big authenticity guy. I can sniff out fake shit in a second. And I'm I know other people can too. So I was just let's just fucking wear it on our sleeves and, let's just do our thing.
Hell fucking yeah. Mutaid 100% inspired by True. So it's so cool that you guys have that much similarities. Has there been that person that walks into the brewery and is a little bit taken aback by the metaliness of it?
Oh, like so many. I'd say like in the summertime, like maybe 1 out of 5 people is like not fucking into it, but they're just staying there. I had one lady, I was like cleaning up the patio, and she was sitting underneath one of the speakers, and she was literally shaking. And she's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. This music is driving me insane. And I was like, well, thanks for coming. You know, like I chatted her up, and she's like, the pizza and beer were great, but like this music is just like making me go crazy. And I'm like, oh, all right, thanks. See you next time.
Poor old lady. You put on shows now, which is amazing, and you mentioned a lot of the venues have closed in Kelowna or in that area. Talk to me about having a space to do that and having that vibe, and what you plan to build that to become. Do touring bands come through? I'm stoked. I think it's very cool.
Yeah. It's a part of like one of the pillars of the business. We wanted to have live music from the get-go, and at that point there was a few venues that were having a lot of people tour through, but COVID just like kind of mopped everything up and closed them, and other businesses bought them. So we finally got whittled down to just us, basically. And at that point, we only had a capacity of like 91, so it was pretty tight. And we had some gigs for a minute, and then we kind of made the decision to like up the capacity. So we gutted our bathrooms and threw 3 more stalls in there to bump it up to 150. And we have like kind of like a brewer house and brewery kind of set up where the bar is in this low ceiling space, probably maybe like 1,200 square feet, and then it opens up into the back in the patio, and we kind of just gut all the tables and like clear it out and like turn it into like a little garage hall, and we got a stage that kind of just clips into itself and it expands, and we can fit like comfortably like 120 people like raging in there at a time. And we really want to just kind of keep pushing that. So right now we kind of keep it at about 1 show a week, and it's usually touring bands, and then we try and roll in some local bands too to the bills. We're just kind of trying to keep the dream alive in the Okanagan. And the Kamloops used to be a big touring town, but Kelowna was always off the map because there wasn't really a space. So as soon as we got over that 120 number, people were actually being able to book with us. Like even like our buddies, like managers, were like passing us on. They're like, oh, come on, like come on down to Jackknife, visit the homies, but no dice. So we're really taking the initiative to just really drive effort into the community, and like we'll have gigs on Saturdays, so like we're gonna lose some money on beer sales and food sales, but for Damien and I, it's like it's worth it to put money and value into that community instead. Like we see the later like gain.
Always looking ahead. I like that very much. It's important to not take the money now when you know that in 5 years you can make hypothetically more money and grow the scene at the same time. Is there something, back to Massorum again, something that's really cool about them is that they started small, but they rented or bought a location that was, there was options for growth. Is that something that you guys have where eventually you could rent next door, buy next door, expand everything, have a 300 cap room, but still keep the tap room running at full capacity? Is that a possible future?
It's not really something that I want to get into. Like, this space and size and brew house size allows me as a brewer to be like super flexible, and not only with like brews but also like lifestyle. So like we have a capacity to hang out with our families and hang out with our friends, and nobody's like really working too hard. Like all of our kitchen staff, like Damien's brought them over from other gigs that he's worked with, and like our sous chef Des, he kind of he probably said it the best. He's like these guys don't give any fucks, but they give all the fucks. And it's like, yeah, like we invest in our staff. We try and just like stoke them out. We go on like staff trips to other beer fests and stuff, and we have lots of like collab opportunities and bring people in. So we're just kind of building like a big stoke machine.
Going from being a brewer to being an owner, manager is like a big step. There's a lot more responsibilities that come along with that, including dealing with staff, which you've done the right thing by empowering them and putting mental health and physical health at the forefront, knowing that you've bit off enough that you can chew and being satisfied with that, not having double shifts happening, brewing during the night, which is what happens at Masorum, which is fucking crazy. The brew house is just constantly running. What are some of the craziest complications that you were not expecting stepping in and having all this extra responsibility aside from just showing up at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, running your brew and going home?
That's a hard one.
Because it's a lot more, and then plus in the peak of the pandemic, you have very good stress management skills, apparently, from what I see.
Yeah. Microdosing mushrooms definitely helps. But I don't know, just having like the right people in the right positions and like knowing that like Damo can do kitchen stuff and like he just kills it, and like me just doing beer stuff, we're killing it, and then like having front of house people that are like just like stoked on their positions and can really get the story across is really great. I mean, it's a good full package, and like I really appreciate like everybody that is Jackknife, because like Jackknife isn't just me and Damien, it's everybody, you know, like they're the machine and like we're like the top of the funnel, you know.
It's a whole community that's running this whole brand, this idea that you're building and watching flourish and grow. Let's talk about the beer that you make. You don't make normal beer, a standard beer. You make interesting beer. You make funky beer. I tried a bunch of your beers, and they are out of this world different. There's always a berry in it or funky yeast. Talk to me about making beer outside of the box. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it kind of comes from maybe my weird taste buds from growing up on the farm and just like knowing like things can kind of complement each other differently. Like I think of beer making from more of like a culinary aspect versus like a traditional styles aspect. Like when I'm thinking of like making a new beer, I'm like, I really want these flavors to be in it. Like how the fuck can I get there? And then I'm also like complementing that by adding in different like layers of yeast profiles that aren't traditional either. They're traditional in a different sense, in Norwegian sense and Eastern European farmhouse sense, but using those in ways that not many people in North America are using them. Like they're using them as fermenters, whereas I'm using them as like flavor ingredients, which is super cool. So I'm stacking a lot of yeast and doing a lot of blending. I'm doing lots of different like wood aged things and getting different flavor profiles from like fermentation in wood with different yeast strains. And then we also have like a really hard a really big need to like express like the terroir of the Okanagan. Like I grew up there. There aren't many breweries in town that are owned by locals. There aren't many people who are interested in using local ingredients other than like maybe some fruit once in a while, but it's usually pretty pedestrian. So we're out like picking like berries and leaves and like bark and like we do like a traditional cornel ale now, which is like a Western Norwegian farmhouse ale, and it's made with like fresh picked juniper boughs. So we're also not only looking at making cool flavors, but we're also being really good stewards within our forest as well. So I geotag every fucking juniper bush that I pick from so that I don't pick it twice. So we're leaving the forest as it is and like respecting that, and just trying to use that as a good baseline too, you know, moving forward.
That's fucking awesome. That's very, very cool. How do other brewers react when they come and taste your beers? Because brewers love to go and taste other brewers' beers. You must like blow their minds.
Yeah, I think they dig it. Like I get a lot of like, you know, like the old furrowed brow when they're tasting and they're just like, what the, like they hit like 5 different layers of flavors. Like what the fuck? Like what's going on in here? I had a beer sitting in tank, and it was like a choke cherry double IPA that I fermented in barrels. and it started to taste like cough syrup. So I ended up blending it out with some like other funky yeast from a old defunct brewery in Denver. And it's like now beautiful and pillowy and soft, and it's got this cool like tannin structure from the choke cherries. But it's really nice to have a small, tight community in the Okanagan of brewers that have like figured out where I'm going, and they're able to like understand it and be stoked on it. So I do like lots of collabs with local breweries. Probably like a core little group of people who are really interested in the craft. But building beers with them is really amazing too, because I got buddies who only do like German stuff and like buddies who only do IPA stuff, and they get to come and like express themselves differently in my space when we do collabs, which is really sick. Yeah, I'm like, what do you guys want to do? Like, I started like a fucking like a weird series called Brain Candy, like Kids in the Hall like tip, and it's like, do you have something like so fucked up that your brewery owners will like never let you brew? Like, come hang out with me. Like, well, let's figure it out. So my buddy Aslan from Main Street Brewing, he came and we brewed a Bantha milk beer. And it was like this blue, like chundery coconut, like super like tropical beer, and it was delicious. But it was like you could never make that at scale. Like it would just sit there and oxidize, and it would turn green and shit.
Something that I love about your business model, is also that with that double IPA you were mentioning, a lot of breweries, if they were distributing and they were relying on that tank to bring them X amount of dollars, they would have dumped it and or fixed it somehow and sold it, but they probably would have dumped it and just made another IPA. But you have the opportunity and the patience to let the beer and the yeast do its work to make it something different.
Yeah, totally. Like I got 17 taps at the shop, and I get to the point where I'm like, I'd rather make some weirder stuff and let some things drop off the board rather than fill holes all the time. And I think my customer base has really gotten used to that, and like people in general. So having this flux of like weird and regular core beers come on and off all the time is really cool. I mean, like, craft beer drinkers are the least loyal customers on the planet. So as long as you can continuously have cool shit coming up, like, they're just going to keep coming back. And it's good to, like, communicate that with them, too. It's just like, well, this is coming. Like, check it out. Like, and they see me brewing, too, often, so.
But then you barrel age stuff, too, so they got to be patient.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Like, I have a bunch of really, really cool shit coming out of barrels right now. And I've started a creek project this year, like a traditional lambic-style creek project. Like 4%. Everything's sitting on whole sour cherries in puncheons. And I'm going to start looping it year after year and blending. I'm really excited. We were just pulling nails on it the other day, and it's, like, so light and effervescent and fruity, and it's beautiful.
Hell fucking yes. I was very stoked to collab with you on the Metal Injection Presents Pit Culture project.
Yeah, ours was Crowd Killer, so we did a big hammer double IPA, and we used all cryo 630 hops, like just like hit the fuck out of it, and it was super great. People loved it. It was super juicy and just fluffy and pillowy. It was awesome.
Have you worked with Yakima Chief Hops before, or was this one of the first forays?
Yeah. I've been working with them for a few years. I've been going down to their hop and brew school. I think last year, Mako and I went down, and it was the 4th time I'd been down there. It's a really cool event where you go down and you get to see harvest, and you get to chat with brewers from all over the world. We ended up doing a collab with some dudes in Hawaii at Beer Lab from that, so it's a really good networking opportunity, and you get to like rub new cool hops in the field and shit, and chat with like legends like Jason Peralt, who made Mosaic, and get to chat with him in person. And we just got selected to be on the YCH like Forward program, FWD. They've picked like 50 breweries around the world to work with them on small batch hop products. So really like turning around new experimental hop varieties before they become available to anybody else on the market.
Very fucking sick. Shout out to Luc Beaulieu, the Canadian Yakima chief hop dude. He's the best. He's just so goddamn cool.
Yeah, totally. And Sarah, our new hop rep, Sarah Casorsa. She's moving back to Kelowna, so I'm stoked to be working with her more and more in person.
More about collabs. If you could pick a band, one band, unless you've done it already, the band that you've always wanted to make a collab for, who would that be?
I don't know. I'm really into fucking Video Nasties right now. And it's like Ripper horror metal. I feel like they might be a good opportunity to collab with.
Hell fucking yes. One last question, the classic Vox and Hops wrap-up question. Every once in a while, we dig too deep into the beers and we wake up the next day not feeling too good. What is your hangover cure?
Ooh, fucking probably a A&W bacon and egger, but with like sausage and extra cheese. Yeah, for sure. Just grease machine.
Brad, thank you so much for taking the time, sitting down with me here at Mellön in Montreal. We're crushing beers. We're going to keep hanging out, but not with people listening. Massive cheers to you.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was another amazing conversation. I am so stoked that Brad took the time to fly out here to Montreal to hang out with me, to have this conversation. We just had a killer weekend. I'm stoked that we went to visit my neighbors, Mellön. They make some killer beers, and Brad really appreciated that. The next night, we headed on over to Point Carré, Chinatown. Killer spot here in Montreal. An awesome tap house ran by really cool people. They always have amazing lagers on draft, and we enjoyed a bunch of those before going to see the Australian prog metal band Caligula's Horse. We hung out. We had a great time. I hung out with Jim Gray. Definitely want to get him on the podcast. He's literally one of the best vocalists in the world, and me and Brad just had a great time at Caligula's Horse at Studio TD here in Montreal. What a blast. So stoked that we had this chance to connect, Brad. If you can get your hands on some Jackknife beer, you absolutely should. They make interesting, far-out beers, but trust me when I say they are absolutely delicious. Massive cheers to you, Brad. I'm so stoked that we connected. Now, if you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast's mailing list. You can do that on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week that contains all of the details of everything that has happened in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. You will get to see which episodes I dropped recently. You will also get to see which episodes I have coming up. You will get to hear about any projects I have in the works for the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, and you will also be updated on whatever I got going on with Cryptopsy. That's right. Cryptopsy, we just dropped our brand new album back in September of 2023, and we are doing a whole bunch of stuff. We are planning a massive 2024. You also get to see which albums the Vox and Hops album review crew have reviewed recently, and you will get to see which albums Jerry Monk, Vox and Hops' Metal Architect, has added to the Brutal Awakenings playlist. There's always a lot of stuff going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, and I hate when you miss a single thing, so do me a favor and sign up to the mailing list. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound, Talent Media, and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I will be back with yet again another episode on Tuesday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.